Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Lakers just beat the Pelicans 118-104 to improve to 2-2 on their 5-game road trip, 9-4 overall, and 2-0 in NBA Group B. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to everybody. Before we get into it, a quick note here. I will be wrapping in about 50 minutes or so. I'm going to be doing CNN again tonight. I will actually be doing it with Meta World Peace, aka Ron Artest. So excited about that, but I will be getting picked up by them at 8:45 Pacific time. So gonna wrap sometime between 8:35 and 8:40. However, the good news is I will be doing playback tomorrow to make up for it. So we'll be going live during the Lakers-Bucks game, and then of course we'll be going live afterward for the usual hour and a half to 2 hours. So just letting you guys know that I'm going a little bit shorter tonight, and I do have a heart out here. So I'm going to just breeze through the post-game reaction and then get into the Q&A as soon as I can. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. So Lakers win 118-104, and it was a wild ride, especially in that fourth quarter where Pelicans start on a 10-2 run. Lakers enter the fourth up 18, and then they give up that 10-2 run. All of a sudden, it's a 10-point game with about 9 minutes left, and it's a little close there for the next few minutes in terms of like 8 to 12 points before the Lakers finally put it away. So overarching thought for me was a return to form in a way. Again, like the Pelicans are probably the worst team the Lakers have played in the NBA, the worst team the Lakers have played this season. They are, in my opinion, the third worst team in the NBA and probably the worst team in the West. They had the fourth worst offense going into tonight and the third worst defense. So Charlotte was shorthanded, Atlanta was shorthanded. So I think those two teams, based on like the current forms that the Lakers saw on the road trip, you could say is maybe at a similar level to New Orleans, but like there's nothing like a palate cleanser of playing one of the worst teams in the NBA to get you going. And looking at like the starting group really dominated tonight. With the exception of Marcus Smart, everybody was plus 16 or better. Rui, DeAndre Ayton, and Luka were all plus 30 or better. So the starting group really dominated tonight. All 5 players in double figures. Austin had 31 and 7 assists. Luka had 24, 7 rebounds, and 12 assists. Ayton had 20 points and 16 rebounds. So like those 3 in particular really led the way offensively. And then it was a bit of a mixed bag defensively. Again, playing one of the worst offenses in the league. You got to give the Lakers credit for 13 steals tonight, but a lot of sloppiness from the New Orleans side in terms of like Jeremiah Fears, I like, and you see the potential. And he had 8 steals tonight, which is just absolutely insane. 19 points, 8 of 16 shooting. But you can see like he's a rookie point guard learning on the fly. And then they have several guys trying to do a little bit too much or a little in over their heads offensively. So I thought that certainly played into the Lakers' favor, particularly on the interior where like I like Derek Queen. He is not a rim protector. He is not a plus defensive player. Kevon Looney is pretty washed at this point. And then, Misi, for whatever reason, has been kind of on the outside of the rotation, only played 10 minutes tonight. So it was a relatively easy matchup for the Lakers. However, they had not really had, and I pointed to this coming off of, or earlier in the road trip, they had not really had a wire-to-wire route. And I would say this is the closest thing they've had to a wire-to-wire route. And I think the biggest positive for me, other than Luka and Austin starting to look better, DeAndre Ayton certainly having his best performance of the road trip, was just LA's ability to execute in advantage creation. So going back to the OKC game, OKC was blitzing and trapping, and the Lakers really struggled. Sometimes it was even a turnover out of the trap for Luka or Austin, but they really struggled to execute and take advantage of the 4-on-3 and 3-on-2 opportunities that they had coming out of how OKC was defending them. And there is a difference between OKC, the league's best defense, versus New Orleans, the third worst defense. But still, like, it was nice to see LA, even from a processing and just execution and decision-making standpoint, they were much sharper in this game from that perspective. And, a couple times early, I think they got caught off guard, but then they quickly, corrected course. And I thought DeAndre Ayton did a better job of making himself available and then also looking to make the right reads or attacking the basket. There were a couple times he probably rolled a little bit too deep, but Luka was still able to make the pass. And then guys were making plays early. Marcus had a hot start, made his first 3 shots. Austin hit a corner 3. Rui hit a couple shots early. So like the offense was flowing in a good rhythm with the starters. And just from a processing perspective, I thought like this was definitely their best start to, like, best first half, best start to a game on this road trip. And from start to finish, it was the best they've looked. Now, certainly some things that we need to discuss in terms of what went wrong. And I'm going to touch on those more so in one of my takeaways. But overall, this was a game that the Lakers could have mailed it in. It could have been much closer throughout the game. And yes, there were some spurts where New Orleans was able to go on runs, but for the most part, LA held from about midway through the first quarter on. They were largely in control of this game. They were largely up by double digits. And again, looking at the Lakers' performances up to this point, they had not really had a game like this. So you expect them to beat this type of team like this, but we had not seen, a wire-to-wire performance this coherent. And so I think that is certainly a step in the right direction. Ideally, they never give up that run to start the fourth. They win this game by 25, 30 points. And that's, I think, the next step for this team is minimizing some of those bad runs that they go on, some the bad offensive stretches that then leads to transition opportunities for their opponents. I thought we saw that in particular late first, early second, late third, early fourth, and the common denominator in both, or all of those stretches, were the bench. And the bench is going to be the thing I touch on. The bench was really rough tonight outside of Jake LaRavia, and even he wasn't himself offensively or quite where he's been a week and a half ago or so. Then in terms of notable performers, I touched on it already, but Austin, 31 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal, and a block, 9 for 16 shooting, 11 for 13 at the free throw line, had 12 points in the fourth quarter. And I thought he was the big difference maker during that kind of response from the Lakers midway through the fourth, where for whatever reason, they put Jose Alvarado on him, and the Lakers ran several either pick and roll actions or off ball actions to get Austin going downhill. And we know Austin can struggle against longer defenders. Austin can struggle against more athletic defenders. Austin can struggle against even smaller guys who are a bit stout in that, almost like a Marcus Smart build or someone like a Davion Mitchell. But if you're going to put a 6-foot point guard on him, yes, Jose Alvarado is really quick, but that is the one player archetype that Austin is just going to crush no matter what, other than a big man. So I thought it was a big mistake on New Orleans' part, putting Jose Alvarado on Austin during that stretch, and he just cooked him, and he was getting downhill. He was getting to the basket, made several little runners and floaters over him. And that, to me, ultimately was a big difference in that fourth quarter, and that stymied the run that New Orleans was on. Then defensively, he had, I believe, both his steal and his block came during that middle part of the fourth quarter. So a couple of big defensive plays for Austin as well. So after, he has still not looked himself since coming back from injury. And I think that's something to monitor going into tomorrow is does Austin play? Does Luka play? Those guys have, I think, since coming back from their respective injuries, have not quite looked themselves physically. And this was Austin's best game since his return, but there are still areas where I think he can be sharper and better in. Luka, 24, 7 and 12, 2 steals and a block, 6 of 16 shooting. The jumper is still not quite back to where it was as recently as a few games ago, but did hit several big threes in that first half. His step back was falling. I think was 3 for 5 in the first half, 0 for 3 in the second half. Got to the free throw line a lot. Did a really good job of finding guys out of the traps, keeping the ball moving. And again, like his shot has not been quite the same recently. And I think there's been a little bit of natural regression there. I mean, the dude was shooting 90% on twos to start the season. Like that wasn't going to sustain, but I think he's also been in a little bit of a shooting slump along with Austin, and that has reflected in some of the Lakers offensive struggles during this trip. DeAndre Ayton, 20 points, 16 rebounds. He dominated against Derek Queen and Kevon Looney, as he should, but again, based on how he's played on this trip, that was far from a guarantee. So it was nice to see him playing, more like himself. I think the only 2 steals, a block, had a couple of assists. He had 1 assist in the 3 prior games on this road trip, so doubled that up tonight. The one issue that he continues to have is these blindside turnovers where he just like. The scouting report is out on Ayton where the second he turns his shoulder to the kind of perimeter part of the defense, it's just go slap at it and steal it. And so he had 4 turnovers tonight. That continues to be an issue with him where he just gets stripped and the ball tipped away and smacked away far too many times. And now for the entirety of this trip, he has 14 turnovers to 3 assists. That that was something I noted in the offseason of he is every single season has averaged more turnovers than assists or been even in turnovers to assists. Right now, he is obliterating that in terms of his turnovers versus assists. It's been a real issue for him. But outside of that, I thought had a big defensive, I think it was a block or steal late in the fourth, because sometimes like a strip, you could classify it as a steal. You could classify it as a block. So I would say he had a big strip in the fourth that might have been considered a steal here, but like he played well. So I want to acknowledge that. Rui, 14 points, 4 rebounds, hit a big 3 during that middle stretch of the fourth. Then Marcus Smart had the hot start offensively. I believe started 3 for 3 from that point, went 3 for 12. And we saw some of the not great Marcus Smart habits offensively in terms of not turning down. Like he does yet to see a 3-pointer he is comfortable turning down. So he went 1 for 10 on threes. 5 rebounds though, 5 assists, 2 steals, a couple turnovers, struggled with foul trouble. So did Ayton, and JJ got him a little bit of a rest there late in the fourth to put in Jake LaRavia, Jake, I really liked his game defensively. 3 steals, 2 blocks for Jake. I thought he came in and he continues to be a guy who plays with a certain level of physicality that the Lakers desperately need on the defensive end. And he's a defensive playmaker, particularly off of the ball. So I thought he was great in that sense. Offensively, he's gone a bit quiet, just 3 for 4. So like more efficient than he's been recently, but didn't attempt a 3-pointer. And I feel like just has not made an offensive impact in quite a few games here to the standard we had seen over that like week and a half stretch he had, culminating of course with the Minnesota game. So he's been someone who's been struggling. Then we get into Vando, Jackson, and Dalton, which that was a really rough stretch there with those 3 players and the bench minutes. I mean, Jackson minus 21 in 12 minutes, Vando minus 19 in 11 minutes, Dalton minus 12 in 10 minutes. The Lakers, like right now, with how the bench is playing, it's hard to play these guys. And I really do not like the Jackson-Vando combination, but I will touch on that in a second. In terms of stat of the night for me, I look at 22 fast break points for the Lakers. This has been a group that is not excelled in transition this season in terms of continually and consistently getting out in transition. And I think they played too slow at times. I think they failed they've had like situations where it's a 3-on-1 or a 4-on-1 and they botch it, or someone gets stripped, or someone makes the wrong read. Tonight, I thought the transition game was much better. And one of the big things was the hit ahead passes and leaking out. And that's actually where Jake LaRavia, at least 2 of his 3 field goals were directly from just leaking out in transition. But it wasn't just him. There were several guys who got out in transition and scored that way. So I think like finding ways to get easy baskets is always important in any game, but especially with how the offense has been lately, I thought it was nice to see LA looking for those easy baskets in transition and catching New Orleans sleeping. Now, in terms of takeaways, let's get into takeaway number 1 here. I think the Lakers have a real problem on their hands right now with the bench. Coaches have different philosophies in terms of how they want to run the rotation. And for a lot of coaches, it ends up being like 3 or 4 bench players out there. But I think with the current group of players that the Lakers have, I have really not liked the trio of Jackson, Vando, and Dalton. I think you have 2 very limited offensive players and 1 very limited defensive player. Then they've often been playing Marcus Smart as one of the other, players out there with that trio. And now you have another relatively limited offensive player because Marcus has not been shooting the ball well. He's been passing the ball well, but he has not been shooting the ball well for the entirety of the season. So now you have 3 guys out there who if you I went back during that first time out after they cut the lead to 10 and watching some of the possessions, New Orleans is just packing the paint and saying Jackson, you're not getting a lob, and Luka wasn't even out there, so Jackson's probably not getting a lob anyway. But Vando, we don't have to guard you. Marcus, we don't have to guard you. And JJ did make the substitution to put LaRavia in for Dalton, which I liked. But still, it was that group just was generating nothing offensively. And I think it's getting to the point now, especially I think it's really been illuminated on this trip. I really do not like the Jackson-Vando combination together. And they're in a tough spot because I don't know how you stagger that to limit that, because that's just kind of the way that JJ's been running the rotation. But then you add in Dalton, and I just think they can have some really rough possessions on both ends where I don't think you're maximizing either end. And looking at the quartet of adding in Marcus, it's really early lineup data. It's been around 20 something minutes, but those groups have been getting destroyed. And again, part of this is LeBron's going to be back at some point next week, most likely. Gabe Vincent's supposed to be back within the next week or so, most likely. So that will change the rotation a bit, where LeBron will start. Either Marcus or Rui will move to the bench. That will bolster the bench. Although, at this point, I think it should be Rui, and it should probably be Rui taking maybe Vando's spot in some of those lineups. But then you also have Gabe in there, and the Lakers will have reinforcements on the way to help solve this. But for the time being, I think they're just bleeding points out there with this Vando Hayes combination. And, for tonight, they've tried different things with Austin being the guy out there and Luka being the guy out there. I think you could probably get away with it more with Luka, but especially when Austin is the 5th guy and it's everything is on Austin's shoulders. I have not liked those lineups on either end, but particularly offensively. But then they tend to turn the ball over or take in, not get good shot quality. And then that leads to transition opportunities for the opponent. So I think that's just to me, that was the biggest blemish on this game, was the Lakers ran off the floor both times they went to the bench centric units. And if those lineups, basically if they played the starters, 40 something minutes each, they probably win this game by 25, 30. It's just, they couldn't do that, obviously, front end of a back-to-back. And even then, Luka ended up playing 40. Austin played 39. Takeaway number 2 is the Lakers continue to be are still in the driver's seat for winning the NBA Cup Group B. Looking at it as of right now, Clippers and Dallas are tied 112-112. Clippers are the only other team to be undefeated. So If they win, they will be 2-0 with the Lakers, but the Lakers entered with a +5 point differential. With the +14 tonight, they're now up to +19. So even if the Clippers win, and let's say they win by 2, now they were +2 entering tonight, that'd be +4. So the Lakers still have the advantage in point differential, which is the tiebreaker in NBA Cup group play. So Lakers remain in control. They've also played their 2 road NBA Cup games now. So the next 2 will be at home against the Clippers and against the Mavericks. So Lakers are in the driver's seat to win this group and to advance to the quarterfinals. It will be a tall task to beat OKC, who's also been undefeated in their group, and I would say at this point is the heavy favorite to come out of the west side of NBA Cup play. But like they're also in a relatively easy group in Group A, so we'll see. But the Lakers are in a good spot to at least advance to the quarterfinals, if not the semifinals, depending on how the matchups break. So tonight was a big win for them in terms of advancing in the NBA Cup. And then takeaway number 3 before we get into the Q&A quickly. I think tonight, like bringing back the scouting reports for some potential trade targets. So looking specifically at Herb Jones and Trey Murphy III. Trey Murphy, 35 points, 13 of 21 shooting, 3 of 7 on threes, 6 of 6 on free throws, 6 rebounds, 0 assists, 1 steal, 6 turnovers. So pretty good audition for Trey Murphy to state, the case for why the Lakers should try to trade for him. Quickly with him, like 3-level scorer, obviously an elite shooter, and just a really good player, really good scorer. I think we saw 6 turnovers to 0 assists. Like there are some ball handling and decision-making limitations with him. That's one thing I've noted, where I know people are quick to put Austin in the trade machine for Trey Murphy. And like, yes, he's bigger than Austin and is a better shooter than Austin. However, you are giving up there's a big gap there in between those two in terms of the playmaking, the ball handling, the decision making, the turnovers, the assists, what they're adding to the offense from a creation standpoint. Trey Murphy is much more of a finisher than a creator. He still can create, though he is better creating for himself than his teammates. And his playmaking, to be clear, like the playmaking, the ball handling have improved, but there's still like Austin is a legit point guard. Trey Murphy is not. And that's, I think, a big distinction between those two. Doesn't mean one is the right answer, but for a group that is still struggling to sometimes generate looks and with the ball handling and playmaking that they presently have, I think shifting that over dramatically would really change the tenor of the offense. And then defensively, I actually thought he did a solid job on Austin like earlier in the game. In general, though, he does tend to play a bit upright and there's a little bit of stiffness with him. So I would say he's like an average to fine defender. He's not a wing stopper. So that's the other thing of if you are trading, if you're looking at him as like maybe there's a way to not even include Austin and just put all the other pieces on the table to get Trey. He's not that fit level defender that the Lakers, or like fit starter defender that the Lakers need or want. Like he's a better version of Rui in some ways, right? Definitely a better player and a better scorer and a more versatile and dynamic offensive threat. But in some ways it's sort of the same thing where like, he could play off the ball similar to Rui, and he could actually, he could rack a closeout. He can even run pick and roll and like initiate for himself, but not a big rebounder. And I think he's better defensively than Rui, but he's not like this. He's not Herb Jones, and that will transition us to Herb Jones, who I thought had a really good defensive performance against Luka, all things considered. He blocked him on a jumper, which it's really rare that Luka gets blocked on a jumper. And if he does, it's often by like a big who's like really athletic or really long. Herb Jones is just one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. The issue with Herb, as we saw, 4 for 14 shooting, 1 for 8 on threes, a little chaotic in like a Marcus Smart way, which has its pros and cons. Overall for him, 13 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, couple turnovers, 5 fouls. So I think Herb Jones is closer to what the Lakers need for that 5th starter spot, especially if you can keep Austin and maybe it is some combination of like Rui and a pick or something like that. But offensively, he had a couple nice drives and he missed several good looks. And overall for the season, he's been an above 40% 3-point shooter. That has been coming down. Entering tonight, he was at just under 44%. So that will probably go down to 42, 41%. But I think for what the Lakers need and what the theoretical costs would be for each player, I'm much more on the side of trading for Herb Jones. But you also, to me, he's almost a better version of Marcus, where I think he's a better scorer and shooter at this stage of his career. He's also a better defender, but he's going to take some questionable shots. He's going to make some questionable decisions. And the shooting can be streaky and a bit shaky at times. But if you replace Marcus in the starting group with him, still have Marcus off the bench, I think that configuration makes a lot of sense for this group. And I think it would be worth flipping Rui for him. But that was just quick breakdown of those two guys and how they performed tonight. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A. Again, reminder, I'll be going in about 20 to 25 minutes. I'm going to be doing CNN tonight. So I do have a hard out. First one, thank you to Light Him Up for the super chat. Would a Saddiq Bey trade be possible? He's making $6.3 million through next season. I'd much rather see him off the bench instead of DK. He can also play 2 to 4, I believe. Seems to be a solid all-around B player. I like Saddiq Bey, and he's a big boy. I think he's officially listed at 6'8", 215. There's no way that dude is under 235. Like that, I don't know when they weighed him, but tonight 11 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal. 3 for 13 shooting, 3 for 8 on threes. So he was 0 for 5 inside the arc, and I thought one area that really stood out with him in terms of a struggle was he really struggled finishing against. Just in traffic, but against DeAndre Ayton. He had the one play where Jake LaRavia stripped him late. That was arguably a foul, but they didn't call it. So I think he's kind of like a tweener in between being like a 3 versus a 4, where he's maybe more like 3 sized, but I think is probably best suited to play the 4. I'd be fine with trading for him if it was like, to your point, if you flip Dalton for him, or Dalton in a second, something like that, or even the money at that point would not work. So it would probably have to be Dalton. Figuring out the money would be a little tricky. But in theory, yes, I would like Saddiq Bey off of the Lakers bench. I just the money part, it would probably have to be something like Dalton and Jackson to actually get the money to work. And now you have a backup center problem. So they're not trading Bronny, and yeah. Judge 105, thank you for the super chat. LeBron should sit out until February, March to be ready for the playoffs. Luka and AR can manage until then, so we are in the best shape for the playoffs. I respectfully disagree, and I will respectfully disagree for 2 reasons. One, I think you've seen already the cumulative workload take its toll on Austin and Luka. I think both guys have looked better earlier in the season than they currently do right now. Both guys' jumpers were falling earlier in the season better than they are now. And both guys were healthier earlier in the season than they are now. Both guys have dealt with, obviously, Luka with the leg contusion and the hand injury, and then Austin with his groin injury. So I don't think it's sustainable for... I've been on the record with both players that I think their minutes and their current usage percentages are unsustainable. I think ideally both of those things both of those metrics will drop once LeBron returns. So I think you might have LeBron in the best shape come playoff time, but I think you're going to wear out Luka and Austin. And I think we've already started to see the Lakers have progressively performed worse and look like a weaker team from they kind of rose to start the season, and then it's been pretty much a dissension over the last week and a half. And maybe part of it's just being on the road trip. Maybe part of it was coming off of that high of the San Antonio game. There are a variety of factors that could be playing into it. I think a big thing is the injuries with Luka and Austin, respectively. But I think you are going to wear both of those. In theory, they should be able to carry the load, but I think we're starting to see some of the weaknesses and limitations with this group without LeBron pop up, especially on the athleticism front. And even tonight, like when New Orleans was able to kind of swarm and like get this into a more up-tempo game, they looked more comfortable than the Lakers did for some of those stretches. So I'm a little skeptical that they could. I think eventually there'd be some diminishing returns with them kind of carrying that workload. And I do think you'd be wearing out Luka and Austin for like right now with how much the Lakers are leaning on them. I don't think that's a sustainable approach for the rest of the season. Then the other, I think the bigger thing, even more than what's sustainable and what type of workload they could carry, those three in particular, but I would argue the starting group, the closing group, and just the rotation in general, they need reps. Like this goes back to my gripe with the team's approach to training camp in the preseason. This group is not had reps together, and LeBron was not healthy, so that was a factor that was out of their control. And obviously, limited participant in training camp, didn't play in the preseason, has yet to play in the regular season. So that has been a limiting factor that is out of LeBron's control, out of the Lakers' control, etc. But we still don't really know what Luka, Austin, and LeBron can be together because we've only seen it in a limited sample size. So I think if you wait for another 3 to 4 months, and then finally try to put it together like 2 months into the playoffs, you're basically in the same situation you were in last season where that group only had like a 2-month runway, and then LeBron got injured, so that kind of affected it. But I think this group needs far more reps. And if you're looking at the connectivity and the harmony that OKC has, the only way you get to that is through reps, is through repetition, which is the same thing. But like continuity and chemistry and like all those things, you need that time together. And I like there's nothing in the NBA as valuable as time on the floor together, even more so than film room, even more so than practicing. It's like figuring it out on the fly as a group, being in the trenches together. So if you lose that, I think that would be a massive hurdle for this group to overcome. Like, yes, in theory, they have the basketball IQ to figure it out. I don't doubt that, but it's way different to like theorize about how Luka, LeBron, and Austin fit together compared to them actually being out there and playing together. So I think because ultimately I think this puts too much on Luka and Austin's plate, and they're already banged up. And then two, I think you lose valuable continuity with LeBron, Luka, and Austin. Next one from Zakwan. Thank you for the super chat. Number one, get me Herb, even for Rui in the first. Get me Keon Ellis and Mitchell Robinson in the summer And then two, should we extend LeBron for one season or chase Giannis? Thoughts? Yes, I would do Rui in a first for Herb. I don't know if New Orleans would do that. That might be a little low for them in terms of what they want for him. But if that was on the table, I would pull the trigger if I'm the Lakers, because I think he would fit long-term with Luka and Austin, or just Luka. If you want to ultimately flip Austin, you can just still keep Herb Jones and have him as Luka's backcourt mate, or the starting three. Keon Ellis, I think it's gonna be tough to pry Mitchell Robinson out of New York. He's a really big piece of what they're doing, and that's where, in general, my default with like teams that are contenders are going for it. But I've made this point before, but like if a team blows the Lakers away for an offer for DeAndre Ayton, like, unless you're getting a starting center back, it's almost like you're kind of giving up on the season, or you're taking a big step back if you just trade DeAndre Ayton for, even if it was like an interesting young prospect and a pick, you could make the argument like, hey, this young prospect is going to grow longer term with Luka and Austin. You're getting a pick, like, long-term team building, but you'd be taking a big step back this season. So I know you said in the summer, so that could potentially be the way things play out. But I think New York is probably going to try to keep him. I think Keon Ellis would be a guy who could be potentially pried out of Sacramento, though. In terms of extending LeBron versus chasing Giannis, LeBron would have to want to be extended and sign off on that. I'm not even sure if he's eligible to be extended off the top of my head. I haven't really entertained that possibility. If LeBron was open to some sort of going into next season. If you're the Lakers, I think you should consider that. But I think for the Lakers, a big thing is going to be what that number is, and if it's the max or if it's a bit less, right? Because that's going to ultimately determine your flexibility. So I personally would be open to it. I don't know what that number would be, and I don't know where the Lakers fall in terms of what number is appropriate versus not. I think we're too early in the season to figure that out. And then chasing Giannis, like, sure, I don't think the Lakers have enough of a trade package. I mean, it's got to be Austin and 3 picks. And even then, I don't know if that's enough. And you also have, like, it has to be a specific timing because it would have to be a draft day trade that's when the Lakers have their 3 picks, and it's before they've drafted the 2026 pick. So you could do 2026, 2030, 2032 on draft night of the 2026 draft. But is that enough for Milwaukee? Also, with so many expiring contracts for the Lakers, it's going to be a little bit trickier with the salary matching. Now, you technically don't have to salary match in the offseason. That's where you get some of the flexibility. But like then you have some roster things you got to figure out at that point in terms of your depth. So, I mean, if you could chase Giannis and it's realistic, sure. I continue to say I think he's either staying in Milwaukee or going to New York. I think the Lakers are, I don't want to say not in the mix, but like it does seem like New York is his clear preferred destination. Chris asking, did Buha pick us tonight? We won, so I'm thinking he did. I did pick the Lakers. I mean, I picked the Lakers for a 4-1 road trip. I had the one loss as OKC, so I got that one right. I did not have an Atlanta loss on my bingo card. Going for about 10 more minutes here, so let's... Cage Britt, do you think we should start Vando? I know how JJ feels about him and his offensive limitations, but starting Vando allows somewhat of a point of attack while allowing Rui to strengthen the bench's scoring. I think everything you are saying applies to starting Marcus and starting Marcus next to LeBron and Marcus being the point of attack guy. I'm actually in the opposite boat where I think Vando's minutes... I think Vando has been so harmful offensively that I'm actually more in the side of like his role being reduced and him probably being more of like a 10 to 12 minute a night guy. I think because I also don't think the defense, like it's one thing if Vando was defending at like an all defense level. I don't think that has been the case. I think he's had some good defensive moments, but even tonight there was some like he gambles a lot off the ball, will lose shooters. I feel like sometimes people focus too much on like the one play where he'll dive on the floor and like have the impressive steal or rip away. But like the possession to possession defense, I don't even think has been at like the level that, or hasn't been at a level, in my opinion, to offset how harmful he has been offensively to the Lakers spacing and their lineups. And it's really to the point where like, it's tough. It's really becoming tough to play him, in my opinion. Let him up. How did you get your spots on CNN? Congrats, by the way. Thank you. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the question. So my friend, Alex Michelson, who used to be on Fox LA and recently transitioned over to CNN. He has a new late night show on CNN, and it's a West Coast show. Runs 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Monday to Friday. It's called The Story Is. And one thing when he got this job, like they told him to experiment with different stuff. So he's trying to experiment going beyond just politics and the hardcore news and having a little bit more fun. So one of the things he's trying to do is feature more fun topics. And one thing he's really into is sports. So, we have been friends for a couple of years now. Coincidentally ended up like we went same high school, same college, and now we're both in journalism. So it didn't really know each other until a few years ago. So kind of crazy how intertwined our lives have been without really even knowing it. But so he told me that when he got this, like he would love to have me on. They invited me on last week, did it, and then I guess it went well, and they're bringing me on again this week. Andre Miller, Worldwide Buha, appreciate it. NR, super proud of you. Jovan, appreciate it. Kane Carter, hey Jovan, I get holding out on the right Rui trade and Vando's untradeable, but why can't Rob at least move Gabe, Maxine, Connect? It's clear they don't fit. To me, it's more of a timing thing. I continue to say this is not trade season. There's a reason why we have not seen a trade happen here, going back to I don't even remember the last trade. There's maybe been like a couple minor moves, but there's not been a trade since the offseason. And the reason why there's not been a trade since the offseason is this is the down period in terms of the trade cycle. Trades happen in cycles, and the trade cycle officially starts December 15th and really probably closer to the new year, like we saw with the Lakers and the DFS trade. So I think right now it's just more so a timing thing of teams want to see where they're at. A team we highlighted before the season that was likely going to be a team that was going to be a seller was Phoenix, but Phoenix is 8-5 right now. They are playing really well. They're on a 5-game win streak. So all of a sudden Dillon Brooks might not even be available. Why would Phoenix give him up if they're looking like a potential playoff team? On the flip side, a team like New Orleans is now 2-10. They've had a disaster season. They've had a disaster start. Everyone's injured. And New Orleans, it's what's the point? You could theoretically be all right, well, Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are long-term pieces for us. But if you get a certain price for either one of those guys, I think if you're New Orleans, you have to at least consider it. So that's where they could go in potentially a different direction with one of those two or both. So I think it's just really early in the trade cycle for teams to between now and December 15th, exactly, a month and 1 day from now, some team will suffer a big injury. Some team will go on a slump. Some team will surge. Some team will get guys back from injury and have guys play better. And those 2 to 4 teams are going to either drop out of being sellers and in the trade mix or become sellers and enter the trade mix. So I think we got a 1 month runway here to see who's going to actually be available, what the prices are going to be. And I think that's when you'll see Gabe, Maxey, and Dalton be the 3 guys most likely on the move. Not necessarily, to be clear, not necessarily going to be traded, but if the Lakers make a move, I assume it would be at least one of those 3, if not 2 of the 3 or all 3 potentially. Appreciate the love in the chat. It means a lot, you guys. BC 8-5 with their opponents' records isn't that impressive, but also notes that Lakers have had the 3rd hardest schedule. Mitch Potter, Jovan, do you think the Pelicans would be more likely to move players if Willie Green gets fired, or how would that affect it? Potentially. I think it, regardless of whether he gets fired or not, I think the big thing is just going to be who they deem as players that are worth keeping around. And looking at their roster, what's weird with this team is I like a lot of the individual pieces. I just don't like the collective together. But I think already you see Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen as 2 pieces that seem to be foundational pieces moving forward. Both players have played well early into their rookie careers. Then you got this mix of Jones and Murphy and Jordan Hawkins, and then to say nothing of Jordan Poole and DeJounte Murray, and they'll probably, if I was New Orleans, I would honestly keep Murphy and Jones, and I would try, I don't get why they traded for Jordan Poole. That I'm not a Jordan Poole guy at all. That is the opposite type of player that I like. So Poole, Murray, and that trade was proved to not be a good one for them. I think those are the 2 guys they're probably going to try to move off of, but I don't know who's clamoring to take on Jordan Poole or DeJounte Murray. Then you got the big one of do you end up flipping Zion, and what can you get for him, and what's his price? So they're an interesting team because, again, individually, I think a lot of these guys could go into different situations and thrive and be winning players, but the collective just isn't good enough, and they just can't stay healthy. That's been the biggest thing in New Orleans. It's them in Memphis the last few years just can't stay healthy. Even the Lakers to a degree. But I don't know how much Willie Green getting fired affects it, but I think the bigger thing is do they entered the season trying to go for it. That was the Derek Queen trade was them saying, we think we could be a play-in team. That clearly was wrong. It was wrong at the time. It was apparent, but they, whatever, they did it. The thing is, like, how do they view Herb? How do they view Trey? How do they view Sadiq Bey in terms of like long-term pieces? Among them, I would want to keep Trey Murphy the most out of all those guys. And then I would still like, I like Trey and Herb together as a duo. I just, I don't really know which way they're going to go. BC noting that you're talking about Phoenix having an easier schedule. Yes. Sorry, I didn't see your full comments. Sean Parker, why do you think JJ didn't play Adu? So my read on that, I mean, to be completely honest, I think like with the NBA Cup nature of this, like I think they wanted to really go for it and try to win by as much as possible. And like throwing a rookie in who hasn't played in 8 months, that's not really setting him up for success or setting the team up for success necessarily. Does sound like he's going to play tomorrow. I also wonder if that means that Austin and or Luka potentially doesn't play. I don't think it makes sense to rest both of them, but do they rest? Is one of those guys maybe a little bit more banged up than they're letting on and they end up resting them? I guess I haven't seen any of the post game stuff, but I assume we'll see at some point tomorrow morning or in the early afternoon. But I think he's going to play tomorrow. That's what it's been sounding like. And it's funny because now you're throwing him into the fire against the Bucks compared to the Pelicans, but you're also probably trying to conserve some of these guys' minutes and some of the workload with especially the starters. And honestly, I think he should probably just take Dalton's minutes and then go from there. And maybe he starts bleeding into Vando's minutes. Okay, I see a couple super chats that I missed. Hamza, thank you for the super chat. I miss Braun playing out of the post. Can't wait. Yeah, I think LeBron is going to be a big boost to this team on both sides of the ball, but offensively, him playing in the post, playing bully ball, and drawing foul. Well, with Braun, he doesn't get the best whistle, so theoretically, drawing fouls. Maybe he'll get a better whistle this year. But him being in the post tends to lead to good things of high percentage shots or kickouts from the post, or then like hockey assist situations where maybe he kicks it out and then that triggers a rotation and then you get the defense in a blender. So yeah, I mean, Braun in the post is going to be a big part of this team's offense, I think, moving forward, and him as a screener and a roller with Luka and with Austin, especially when like the one I think limitation or hesitation that JJ had with the Braun Luka 2-man game last year was they were often defended by like-sized players, but there will be situations in which they are not defended by like-sized players, and that's where you could trigger Luka getting a big switch onto him, LeBron getting a small switch onto him, and then you can attack the mismatch in whatever way you want to. Then we got one from Andre Miller here. Thank you for the super chat. Rui shooting 50, 50, 70 on a terrible three-point shooting team, and people are saying trade Rui. Surely that's a form of insanity. This is the counterpoint to trading Rui. I think it's tough because I agree with you in the sense that one of the early, and honestly, I think under-discussed weaknesses with this group has been up until, I believe going into tonight, the only players who have been above league average shooters from deep for the Lakers, and I'm quickly checking this, excuse me, were Rui and Jake LaRavia. So this has been a group that has really struggled from deep. And yes, Rui shooting 50%, LaRavia is at 37%. Everybody else is under league average. So you got Dalton at 33, Luka at 31, Austin at 31, Vando at 29. It's above Marcus Smart at 23, Gabe at 20, and then Jackson's technically at 100, but he's taken 1 3. DeAndre Ayton has not attempted a 3. So among like the primary perimeter group, Gabe played in a couple of games. LeBron's not returned yet, and LeBron has been around a 40% shooter going on, the last few seasons. But like Rui's played a big part, and Rui has been one of the only consistent shooters. I think the issue that I keep coming back to with Rui and his role and him in the starting group is he is not good enough to be a wing stopper on a defensively challenged team. Again, I've made the point, like, you want to put him in Minnesota next to Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. You want to put him in OKC next to Chet and J-Dub or Lou Dort. Sure. If Rui's your worst front court defender, that is one thing. But with the way the Lakers are currently structured, if he's the fifth starter, they are basically saying, like, Rui, go cook defensively, go be the stopper. And, yes, you'll have some help with LeBron and DeAndre Ayton and Luka as like, helpers that have some length and have some playmaking and whatnot. But like, that is putting a lot on Rui's shoulders in a way that I think we've seen that movie before. And like, the defense just isn't good enough. So I think he's in a tough spot, and the Lakers are in a tough spot, because I agree. I think they need Rui and they need his shooting, and they need him playing a certain amount, and they need him in a certain role. The flip side is he's not good enough defensively on a team that desperately needs defense, that I think you could argue needs defense even more than they need shooting. Because even with some of their shooting struggles, they've been pretty good offensively. They get to the free throw line a bunch. They can get downhill and create out of that. I think like defense has been by far their worst trait as a group to start the season. So that's where I don't really know what you do. I mean, I think that's where I've kind of settled on, can you cobble together Gabe, Maxey, Dalton, and a first, flip that for the fifth starter, move Rui to the bench, reduce the defensive ask on him, and maybe that sets him up better for success and sets the team up better for success. But they're in a tough spot with that, right? Because again, like, you take Rui out, you don't have the consistent shooting, and he's been an awesome offensive fit. The issue is he's not a plus defender, and they are putting him in a position where he kind of has to be. And I just don't think it's working. And it's not all on him, to be clear. I think it's the collective. I think like it's the overall group, but the issue is for, you kind of know the other four guys of Ayton, LeBron, Luka, and Austin, and there's a limit. Like, there's clearly a defensive limitation to that quartet. So that fifth guy better be a pretty good defender, and that's just not Rui, unfortunately. Then last one here from Miss Optimist, because I do have to go. Any updates on LBJ individual practice only today? No. Not any updates that I saw or have heard. The only thing is that I continue to hear Monday's practice is going to be the big determining factor in terms of whether he plays on Tuesday or not, and how Monday's practice goes is going to be the thing that ultimately that will decide if they want to play him Tuesday or if they want to give him the rest going into the weekend. But I have heard he's looked good in the couple of practices he's participated in, and that he seems ready to go and close. So I feel like if I had to predict, I would lean more toward him playing on Tuesday rather than Sunday, which originally I'd been more on the Sunday side. But my understanding is it is going to come down to how he looks on Monday. And that's obviously something we won't know until Monday. But appreciate you all for tuning in. Again, I am about to go do CNN, so I have to go. But I will be back tomorrow to do playback for Lakers-Bucks, and then we'll be going live after that. Appreciate you all in the chat. Appreciate the love. Appreciate the support. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then.